Appeals for case number 2019-Z24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
And that one's for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Our next case is 2019-Z17, 1936 Schiller Avenue. This is a request for a 3-foot side yard setback variation to permit the retention of artificial turf.
Hi, welcome.
Hello. How is everybody?
We're doing well. How about you?
I'm good. So, you want me to cut to the chase. Should I tell them who I am? I've lived in the community for 19 years. I've had a synthetic turf business for 15 years.
I'm going to ask you to just slide over a little bit so that you're talking to the microphones.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've had a synthetic turf business for 15 years and basically do installations around Chicagoland. On occasion, I've done a project in Wilmette like this. We did one last summer. We did get a permit for a full backyard last summer. This project came up and was a new homeowner. We were not doing a grade change, and it was a narrow putting green, and we had gone through a permit fatigue on a new construction project. He had received everything. At looking back, we probably should have really been emphatic. We were not. So now we're at a point where we put the putting green in. We have worked with engineering and community development. We've met with them multiple times, taken them to the site, and asked, how can we keep this putting green in and still abide by the 3-foot variance? So we came up with a plan with both areas that they said they would agree to but we have to present it to you. And that would be putting in the French drain along the fence line, all to spec, all to engineering standards. Put the flap up. We want the flap down. There's a new baby in the house. Part of why we put this in was the yard was not really designed for a lot of running around, so they have a 1-year-old now. So this is a sports amenity. It also has permeability, and I want to address what has happened since we put this in, because that was the big question. Let me do it this way. So on May 30th, which is when we...
Excuse me for 1 second. There is a pull-out tray on that side. If you're just going to focus on one picture at a time, it may be helpful.
Okay.
If you pull, it's on the side there. You see the handle? Pull it. And now, if you can kind of get each picture or what picture you're talking about laying flat, then it'll
Okay.
project on the
First,
screen.
I want to talk about May 30th.
Ask a question. Has the current situation changed from the time the request was made?
No, nothing's we're just asking for a variance.
But I don't understand what the variance is about.
Okay, so because we need 3 feet along the fence line, we have grass there.
And what is it now?
It's grass,
How many feet?
3 feet.
So what's the variation request?
We're going to pull up the flap, put in a French drain, and aggregate gravel, but we want to cover the flap. And engineering said they would go along with that because of the design of the yard.
And it's a continuous trench drain going from
one
north to south.
Absolutely, and a pop-up drain on each side.
Okay.
And but what I want to address, I have a letter from each neighbor. This week, no water issues since it's gone in. I have pictures on May 3rd.
It's already in?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. So the way that I read through the report, what's causing this to be an impervious surface is this underlayment that goes below the turf, right?
And we're going to take that out along the fence line.
So from the fence line to the edge, which is like
We will take
2.7
out
feet.
so that piece is underneath the surface, but I have cups in it, which is drainage. We put a PVC tube and we go down 12 inches and put pea gravel. It is a release. We've been doing this for years. We have an engineering design. But what I want to show is the water.
So, stop, you made a comment that it's grass.
Synthetic grass.
Okay, it's synthetic.
So it looks-
So it's all, this goes all the way up to the property line right now.
The
The
synthetic
synthetic
products.
material
Yeah,
goes all the way to the
Did you have a
property line.
chance to visit?
Oh, I
No.
did,
Okay.
and I want to make sure that you're saying the same thing that I'm saying right now, because I saw it and it's in your report, and it didn't sound like that's what you were saying at first, which is why I asked, you
Okay,
said grass,
so
and what we're talking
synthetic
about is
grass.
synthetic material
Yeah,
all
I'm
the way to
sorry.
the property line, and you need to be 3 feet from the property
Right.
line with the
Right.
synthetic
So-
material.
So
that's
this design
impervious.
needed to be along, and we stayed in with the sending the water to the back. And what we wanted to show, which is what was the concern, on May 30th, when we reached all the records of record breaking since 1945, this is the alley at 6 a.m. in the morning. We went there, it's dry, the water went right the way it's supposed to flow. The way it was originally designed, when engineer signed off on this yard, this is what's happening.
Do you have in-house engineers that help you out with this?
No, the village engineers
Oh,
are the
no,
ones.
I meant for your original design when you do that. Do you
Okay,
have
so
somebody?
here's so grading is what we do. We stay with grades. So engineering, yes, we put this in almost to the T except for one area. If you looked,
Just so, my vision of it, and I just peeked in through the fence, was that there's the flat area and then it drops off towards the fence.
Right.
That was
Like-
how-
Like
And
8 or
that
10
wouldn't
inches.
that would not be a typical grade in a backyard.
but that was what, that was what the village wanted so when this was done,
So they
if you-
did raise the grade to accommodate this.
we did not raise the grade. We did not raise the grade. I mean, you have a before and after. Along the fence line, they actually, when we went in to do this project, they were so concerned about water that they cupped the sod, the original design, they cupped it. They didn't, they cupped like a bowl.
Village asked you to do that?
That was
Because now
what
it drops
the
off. It
original,
drops off like 8.
So
the
That's the
original,
bottom of the fence.
describe cupping,
Yeah.
what is that?
So,
what I'm saying, they didn't go, they had it up. If you follow,
They had what up, the artificial grass?
no, I am looking at the plat survey, the before
chain
and
link
after.
that's
And
why.
what
Okay.
we did is we followed, we took out one swale, which was here. And that was the concern. There was one swale that
so the swales are designed to keep water on the property.
and we did, that's what I'm trying to show you.
Okay,
is
but
everyone
I'm-
is,
I'm going to stop you right now. So
Okay.
your before and after pictures that you submitted in the packet, the before picture shows like a chain link fence. Is that
Oh.
right?
okay,
Right,
that was
there's a-
before
right,
the
before-
homeowner.
Before
The homeowner, that was before they put their fence in, yes.
and when did they put the fence in? This wood fence? After you did your work, or while you were doing your work?
Right before we did our work.
Okay, so,
It shows in the picture.
yep. So, you were saying that you didn't change the grade. What it looks like happened at some point in time, somebody dug down to create this difference between where the putting surface is and where the fence is.
Well, actually, that picture that you're looking at, we went and made some changes when we one of the pictures during construction, we went back and did some changes before we even, to match our grades.
I went on the day after the birthday celebration for your applicant's child. I went, and she was very kind to let me walk through her house to the backyard. And it's clear that the level of the putting green is what, 9, 10, 12 inches
Higher.
above the level of
Of the lot line.
the lot line.
So what I know this was my issue too, and Lisa kind of straightened me out a little bit in our little pre-meeting psych-up session. That if you look at what the request here is that we've got a side yard setback. We don't have an impervious surface issue. If we grant this,
Can you
this
explain to me
request,
the side yard setback, because there is a setback now, isn't there?
no, because the impervious surface goes all the way to the lot line right now. The impervious surface runs down that slope to the lot line. All right, and the setback with impervious surface like this is supposed to be 3 feet from the lot line. So that's why they're asking for a 3-foot variance from the setback.
Are you saying that the surface material of the putting green
Is impervious.
is different from the
The grass.
surface?
They're both
It's all the same.
artificial.
Artificial.
They're both
But
artificial.
there is drainage designed in this project.
Okay, so what we've got, though, it says that if we approve this, I lost my page. If the variation is approved, the applicant will need to revise the grading plan and modify the drainage along the east lot line.
Yes.
Okay, so you still need to do some modifications, although you've got some drainage in there, and you're trying to show us that the drainage is doing its job.
Right.
There's still an agreement
Right, we're
that
still-
if we approve this, you still need to make these changes.
We are still going
Okay.
to do it. I'm here to ask for the variance along the fence line.
Right.
Then that is part of the design, and that is, we did everything to create drainage, but because of the setback of 3 feet,
Yes.
mulch was not going to work. And the client, it would not have worked for this project.
So our concern, though, is that you've modified the swale that was along that east lot line. This is just personal concern that people seem to be noticing. There's a difference in the grade level. So when that house was built in, probably what?
Last year.
That whole house was built last year?
It's a brand-new construction.
Okay, I thought it was built a little further back, but okay, so
Only
last year it was
2
built.
years, Lisa? I mean, they just moved in. They
No, it
just
said
finished.
2018, I believe, in
18.
the
So
document.
when they do new construction like that, they have to create swales along the property line to keep water on the property. That's, if you do major work on your property, this is what you have to do for your grading. You came in and you removed that.
Yeah.
And you created one of these problems that we see with our eye and that the village is concerned about, which is, I believe, why they're asking you to do this additional drainage, just to make sure that you're not creating the runoff from your property
Because you
to go
did, the
next door.
grade was
Because you
raised.
changed
Abs-
the grade.
Yeah, well, so here was our challenge. Our challenge was to make the yard functional. And grade change, the walk was in the middle, the swale, they had one spine here, and I think that's what it's at the bottom and it's at the top. There's, if you look at the plat and you line up all the numbers, which is what we tried to do at the end, is make it all match up. This was the only usable space in the yard that fit the design. And my client, who, brand-new house, brand-new family, brand-new everything, just,
Old fence, new house.
you know,
I guess
I mean,
the difficulty that I have, and I understand the issues, it was raised up, obviously, because now there is a swale towards the fence. But if you've been doing this for 15 years, do you usually go without a permit on these projects in other communities?
No, we have to get permits.
So you
We just got a permit we did a project before that. I have another project.
but you decided not to on this one?
Well, no, it wasn't that I decided not to. It was,
But-
I don't have an answer for you. It was one of those, I said, and
What, did you
It's a
discuss the
very-
concept of a permit?
pardon?
Did you discuss the concept of a permit
I'm
with the
not
owner?
going to go through that. That's not, I'm taking this on myself. I do put that on people, and I write it in. This situation, I did not, I'm bearing the price. This guy wants his putting green, he wants his putting green. I'm trying to figure out how to make it work in our community.
So the focus here is, do we see any hardship, or is there a gray area that you can justify hardship here for a 3-foot side yard setback variation to permit or to retain what was built? If they came to us and asked for relief from this, what would you say? That's kind of the way that we've been directed by corporate counsel to deal with, asking for relief from something that's already
Well,
been
could
done.
that, I mean, I understand the drainage portion, and that will help. Is there a way just to make that not a impervious surface, to put grass right there and have some sort of small barrier between there, or that's just not done?
So this yard and the way it's been designed, that would totally, it's been designed so that a child can play and run and not fall, and to put grass and sod, he already said that I'm not putting sod there. I mean, I don't mean it to sound like that.
You mean-
He just said that would not be to his liking to put sod along that area,
Fence line.
because the whole look is meant to have no maintenance, have a child use it. I mean,
So is the whole yard that artificial? Not the whole
oh,
yard,
no,
just
no, this is
just
one
from-
strip, this is
Okay.
one
Just
strip.
East of that sidewalk.
Okay.
And then we discussed, well, if I moved it to the other side, we wouldn't have the 3-foot setback, but we would have taken the whole yard. So, you know, it's really complicated because we're trying to make space work in tight areas. We're trying to do something. Our younger families, they want this stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, I am challenged. I'm challenged.
So when did you redo whatever was redone?
When I started when we did it, and we finished it off, and I looked at the grades, we lifted up the side to meet where we were at before. I didn't redo. What I did is
I thought you said you
modified.
just recently put in the French drain.
No, we haven't, we're not allowed to do the French drain until we get permission. I
Okay,
would
all
have
right.
done the French drain, and I was told not to do it until we get permission.
I see.
And I will work closely with engineering. That
Okay.
was the plan.
And the reason you want to keep this is because this is the covering you want over the French drain.
This is the cover, it's a synthetic grass. It drains, this has a permeability, it drains, all this drains. There will be no rubber on this, we will cut it out. And we will flap it over, there'll be a French drain, there'll be all the aggregate gravel. We'll put a pop-up and a pop-up. There will be, and I will have it, Dan will have personally make sure do everything to his specifications. We agreed that that would be the way this could work.
So you just mentioned that you're cutting the rubber out,
There's a pad, you asked me about the pad.
which is the underneath. So you're saying between the fence and the edge of the putting surface, you're going to cut the rubber out? So
Yeah.
that 2.79 feet is going to come out?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it out.
Okay. But that still doesn't change the artificial surface, because you're keeping this artificial turf still as the top layer, right?
But we're not talking about, I'm doing the 3-foot setback.
Right, but even though you're pulling the rubber out and you're changing the permeability of that area, the artificial turf, which is why we have to have this 3-foot setback, is still going to the lot line, correct?
Yes, but that
Okay.
has a drainage.
I get it. I
That
get it.
has drainage.
All right, and
I mean,
that's
I
why
gave
you're
you a
able to
flow
put.
study.
Right, because you got rid of the undersurface,
rubber that
the rubber that
everybody's-
stops, that creates the permeability, or
Yes.
impervious surface.
Yes.
All right, so is everybody clear on what's happening? If we grant this, she's going to remove the underlayment that is rubber between the fence and the putting surface, which is about 2.7 feet by the survey. But the top layer of the artificial grass is still going to be put back down over a French drain that the village engineer is going to oversee or approve. And that seems to be the agreement between homeowner, our developer, we'll say, of this backyard, and village staff.
So what is your alternative if you can't do it this way? What would be your alternative here?
Well, I propose moving it to the other side of the sidewalk.
Well, but let's say that doesn't,
I mean, those are my options.
if you left the 3 feet and you didn't have any covering, you just had dirt and bushes and things like that, would that,
The way it's set up right now, it's still, there's small fractions, there's inches that are over the 3-foot setback.
no,
So it'd still be a
I
minor-
get that, okay, so let's say that's minor.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you could have dirt and you could have bushes or something else there, and you wouldn't have to put in a French drain, and it would just be
But
permeable surface
She
there.
may still have to do the French drain because they changed the grading along the east lot line.
I am doing the French drain.
And my understanding, you're not the homeowner.
No, the homeowner is unavailable.
Right. So what she's saying is that the homeowner's preference is for the artificial surface.
Oh, I get it.
As far as I understand.
I mean, everybody wants a variance, has a preference for
Right.
that.
So, but there's always, so one of the things that we look for is if you came to us and you said, this is what I want to do, I haven't done it yet, this is what I want to do, we're going to ask you to try and, is there a way you can modify this to try and make it work so that you don't have to have as large a variance request? That's what he's getting at right now.
And
Mr.
I
Colling's
asked
getting at.
that too.
And what you've stated once was that, no, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to have from the homeowner.
Well, no, he didn't say it that firmly. He just said, this is what I want, this is what we agreed to. And I respect that.
Yeah.
And so my job is to figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Attached is a certified permeability study. What does that refer to?
So they do drainage studies for turf. They actually have certified,
This relates to this artificial
yeah,
turf.
it drains, there's a drainage.
Just the surface, not the rubber mat that's underneath. She's talking about just the artificial grass layer that is permeable, that lets 185 inches per hour through.
That's the equivalent of natural grass?
185.
That's what it says, cubic inches.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
We weren't able to find any good information on grass. We weren't able to find any good information on what grass is. And to some extent, I would imagine it depends on the soils underneath it.
Right, if there's clay, if there's,
Yeah, so I tried to get a comparison.
Okay, so they're willing to do that to make it almost, we don't know, but maybe hopefully equivalent to natural grass. Why is the elevation difference
why is what?
between the level of the putting green and the area?
In the fence, why is there
Actually, it was, I mean,
It's not. You can see in this photo, the house is already built, the garage is already there, the sidewalk's already in, and the fence is a cyclone fence or some sort of fence that's not a wood fence, and it's all flat, and you can even notice a little bit of upslope towards the east fence line. So now you're 10 inches lower, and there's a wood fence there. This is,
well, I'm not sure because we didn't take out a lot. We took out sod.
To bring clarity to it, maybe, was the sidewalk there before you started your
The
work?
sidewalk was there and the fence was there and there was fresh sod.
Okay, so then I imagine what happened was there was probably a gradual slope from the sidewalk towards
But there's a
to the
swale.
east, and a swale, and probably that putting green's got to be fairly flat, and that's why it's up higher, I imagine.
Yeah.
You know, the putting green
No.
it didn't follow the
We did-
contour of the property.
which is higher, this side or this side? Can you read those numbers?
I mean, that's the only reason, I guess that's the only way I could reason
I mean,
that it would be higher.
We can add dirt and build it up. That is not an issue.
No, it's already built up, I think, is the
Oh,
issue.
okay.
You know, 'cause
We didn't take anything out. What I'm trying to say is, we didn't take anything out. We did grade it.
I think I agree, you probably didn't take anything out. I think you added,
Right, we added the top.
So you added that, which then raised the perimeter of the putting green.
Well,
But that's why there's French drain.
So, I'm not sure about this because I'm still new to the process, but my understanding is that it's not within our purview to figure out the drainage and the
No.
permeability and that would be the village engineer who does it?
So we are given direction, I would say, by like Lisa, okay, this surface is considered permeable and this surface is considered impervious, all right? And so according to the village, even the artificial grass, even though they've got this flow rate chart, the village says this is impervious surface. Well, it's a surface that you're not allowed to have that close to the property line. How's that? That's the way we'll look at it. As far as the slope and everything, if you find somebody that has altered something afterward, I think everybody wants to point that out and ask why it got there, because someone has made a change to what was originally approved by the village. So like this swale that was there, you can tell that this side yard got lowered. But I think that's really already been addressed by the village engineer when they made this statement that if we approve this, the owner has agreed to put in this French drain system to accommodate the change of the elevation that was created. All right, so although we keep sticking with this change of elevation and the slope down, engineering has said, look, if you guys say this is okay, this is what they're going to have to do to, continue keeping this surface.
So that's what
okay?
our purview is here,
That's why,
is to
yeah.
determine if that
If
is
we're-
a reasonable, because we are asked to look at it as if it was just presented to us for the first time. How
Right.
would you approve this?
Right.
The first time around? The first time
Right.
around, I think we would have said,
No.
you're gonna have to make my response would have been, I think the putting green has to be narrower, and you'll have to have a impervious 3-foot surface. That's what I would have said if you would have come to us originally. We wouldn't,
setback.
we typically would not grant something that doesn't meet the code when there might be a way to alter it, where maybe the putting green is 3 feet narrow, but it's, so much longer if you wanted a square foot.
So-
I mean, that's the way I think we typically would approach it.
Yeah, we would. There's a small hitch in this one in that, they've got this, they've had this meeting and an agreement with village engineers that if they do this, as long as we approve it, they will do this, and
That's an
engineering
acceptable
will be
solution.
acceptable solution to the change in the grade.
Sure.
And
Okay.
they must be okay with the permeability of the artificial surface since the rubber is getting removed.
Okay.
All right, are there any more questions for our applicant? No. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak either for or against this case? No, and you guys can't, you haven't been sworn in yet. I'll have to swear you in if you want to say anything. All right, I'm going to close the case, and I'm going to ask if there's a member of the board that wants to make a motion here. Oh, let's not all jump at once. Thank you, Mr. Colling. You may have a seat while we,
where is it?
you may, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Page 3.
Move to recommend granting a 3-foot side yard setback variation to permit the retention of artificial turf at 1936 Schiller Avenue in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Colling.
Yeah, so I think as we discussed, had this become before us originally, in my opinion, I would not have approved this. I think there's a lot of other things that can be done here, from moving it to the other side of the yard to making the putting area a little bit narrower, and we're only talking inches here as far as I can tell. So from that perspective, I don't think it meets the standards of review. I don't think there's a hardship. On the other hand, if all we have to do is sign off because that this, they'll put in the French drain and, the rest of the village, which
Engineer. yeah.
engineer is okay with it, I'm okay with it, so.
Okay.
But for that, I would not be.
All right. Mr. Schneider.
Are we making this a conditional approval, subject to?
No, it's in here that the variation, if the variation is approved, the applicant will need to revise the grading plan and modify the drainage along the east lot line. So if we approve it, this has to happen in order for them to keep it. Correct?
Yes, it's a condition of their permit.
So we don't have to make it conditional. How's that? I'm sorry. I didn't really answer your
So it
question.
goes with, so how do we know that if we approve it, that will happen?
Because the engineering department hasn't signed off on the final grading for the new home, so they will need to do this work in order to close it out and get a final certificate of occupancy.
Even though they're occupying it.
They got a conditional to occupy, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Subject to that, I agree with previous speaker.
All right. Any other comments? Or-
I agree exactly with John said. That's what I would have done. So,
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Colling said.
But you couldn't do it as eloquently, is that what you're?
yeah, exactly.
I was using a big word.
He doesn't like that.
Sorry, we're having a little fun. This is my final meeting as a member of the board, so they're teasing me and I'm playing along. I think, as Mr. Colling put it, that if this came before us, this is really kind of a situation where someone can alter a plan pretty easily to get the variant, to avoid having to ask for a variance. But with the agreement with engineering for the new drainage plan, in order to keep this, I too think I could support it as long as that work gets done. So why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Collang?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Ms. Norick?
Yes.
Mr. Pelton?
Yes.
Mr. Sermon?
Yes.
Chairman Duffy?
Chair votes yes as well. So meetings on July 9th, I think it was? Yep, July 9th in this room, 7:30. It'll be on consent agenda. Could you please come up and sign one of these for me, and then take the other one with you? Let someone make the...
Sure. I move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2019-C-17.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Colling, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
Great, that's for you. Oh, you just did. Thanks so much. Good night.
Good night. Thank you again.
I think he's retiring. I don't know.
All right, so for this next case, we have some more documentation at the table.
You're going to volunteer on another committee, I heard, right?
There's nothing in the future. I'm a free man, free agent. I've been recruited to some other, posts, but I've said, no, I'm going to hold off for some, maybe something that's not 100% volunteer.
Our next case is 2019 Z22, 2124 Schiller Avenue. This is a request for a 68.03 square foot total floor area variation to permit the construction of a shed.
The shed. Hey,
shed.
welcome. Welcome.
Hi, I am Carrie Willeben-Mead. I'm with Mariani Landscape. I'm a landscape architect there, but I'm also a resident of the village. I live at 1612 Highland, so I have for a long time. So I'm pretty familiar with the codes. I just retired from the Appearance Review Committee, and there is an opening, so feel free to continue your career.
I was holding out for Plan Commission, but,
And what night of the week do they meet?
It was Mondays, so.
Hey, you're open Monday.
So anyway, thank you all for being here. Basically, our client, our homeowner, has an existing shed, which we just took down, and would like to replace it with a nicer shed.
When did you remove this shed?
We're doing landscaping there, so we moved it out of the way 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
4 weeks
But
ago.
there's something else there right now, right?
No, it's just an empty dirt spot.
Oh, okay. It looks like there's like a hanging chair or something like that
There's just stuff that was in the shed.
now
hanging.
sitting there. Okay.
Yeah. So the shed's been removed, and the homeowner would like a new shed. We have a little situation where they would like one shed, but our code reads that they could have two sheds to accommodate their storage needs. So either they could have the one shed that's 10 by 12, which is what they would prefer, or they could, per our code, have two 8 by 8 sheds. So
Well, you could have the one shed, but you need a variance to have that one shed, right?
correct. So
Yes.
that's the
For
difference.
the additional.
No. So for
Well, it says the floor area here, 68 square foot floor area variation is
correct.
required.
So it's the difference between if we put in two 8 by 8 sheds, it wouldn't affect the FAR, but because we want to put in one shed, it does.
Because the shed's over,
It's 10 by 12 instead of 8 by 8.
so the 8 by 8 doesn't
Okay.
count, but
Yeah.
the larger shed does count against the FAR.
Yeah. So we feel, yeah.
So
we
they
feel,
want one shed instead of two. They could get away with two, but they really just want one.
So they could have two 8 by 8s?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So we just feel from an appearance standpoint, one shed would look better tucked in next to the neighbor's existing detached garage. So there's a solid structure right there already. We feel it would be a cleaner, simpler look. There's less impervious surface that way. There's actually less square footage covered on the ground. So we just think it's an overall better solution for the village.
All right.
Is this custom built or just off the shelf?
It's a nice off-the-shelf.
Okay.
So replacing one that was
You looking
plastic.
for a shed?
No, I'm just wondering whether it happens to be be that size, and you buy it that size, and
They haven't bought anything yet. We're asking first.
more expensive to build to suit. Anyway,
Good question. Any other questions?
So Lisa, they could actually build two 8x8s
Yeah.
without a variance,
Correct. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
because the sheds don't, under
which would
64.
be 128 square feet, and they're asking for 120.
Right,
Correct.
It's very strange.
yeah.
But it's,
And there are many parts
It's
of the
because-
code like that.
Peculiar.
it's because an 8x8 shed is small enough that it doesn't qualify as a, what do you call it,
Accessory
accessory structure, is that it, or?
We reduced the size of an allowable size of a shed from 100 down to 64. It seemed a good place to draw the line.
Now, is
Yeah,
that
with the
based
24
on
ordinance.
the lot is larger? I mean, if you had a smaller lot, you could still put two sheds on?
Yeah, you're allowed 2 accessory structures on a lot this size.
Oh, a lot this size, but
Yeah.
if you had a smaller
Smaller
lot,
15,000 square feet is the breaking point, so 2 on less than 15,000, 3 on more than 15,000.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could have a 6,000 square foot lot and have 2 sheds on the back.
Yes,
Okay.
but no garage. So
The homeowner
garage would
did
count.
go around and knock on the neighbors' doors and kind of told them what they were thinking and have signatures in support of their proposal. I think they did the right thing by doing that and talking
Yeah.
to their neighbors.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant? No? Christine, you're good on this one? All right. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this case? No, you don't want to speak either for or against this case, honey. No.
I wanted to ask quickly, does the gravel that surrounds it, does that count as pervious or impervious surface?
So the gravel that is there is part of the landscape project and is permanent. I think it's a percentage of permeability based from the city engineer's review. But that's all a separate permit.
But
Generally,
I
if there's
guess
a-
that's probably not a concern since there's not a garage back there, so you probably don't have a problem with that.
Why don't you clarify what you were about to say?
generally, for zoning purposes, we consider gravel to be an impervious surface.
and the impervious.
An impervious surface. Mhm.
That's another how to touch.
All right, any other questions for our applicant? No, we're all good? All right, I'm going to close the case. I'm going to ask if there's a member of the board who wants to make a motion. Mr. Sermon, your motion.
I move to recommend granting a request for 68.03 square foot or 0.55% floor area variation to permit the construction of a shed at 2124 Schiller Avenue with the plan submitted.
All right, a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Pelleton. Sorry, I put an R in there. Mr. Sermon, your motion.
I think we discussed it previously. I mean, if they're really able to build 2 sheds, then one combined is a smaller area, smaller footprint, and I agree would probably look better aesthetically than 2 separate ones. 2 separate ones, I don't know how far you'd space them apart, what would happen to that area in between, would it be grass, would it be just mud, would it, so I think, and then additionally, because of the location of the property, it's at the end of the alley, and they determined to when they designed the property, they put the garage in front, so the shed then isn't competing with another structure adjacent to it, a 2-car garage and then a large shed, so based on that, and if it's allowed, if the 2 were allowed by code, then I think this is probably a good solution.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Pelleton?
Yeah, I would agree that it seems like as long as the roof height is not, the top of the roof is not any higher, then we're reducing the overall square footage by allowing 1 instead of 2 structures. And so, I was concerned about the gravel because seemed like a considerable apron around the front of it. But if that's already been permitted, then
Right.
I think this is a good way to go.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else with any comments?
Yeah, I think the other thing is this is a pretty de minimis request, 0.55%. So I mean, this is a type of percentage we approve all the time, so I would have no issue with it.
All right. Anybody else? No? Yeah, I kind of looked at this one getting caught up in the code in a way, that causes it to have to come before us to ask for this, and it's a 4 square foot difference, right, by the math? 120 versus 124, is that what you said?
128.
128, so like
8 squares.
8 square feet
Yeah.
if you had 2 sheds versus the 1 shed.
That's
so
that new math.
It's that, yeah, I get it, I know. I didn't want to do any extra work, this is my last meeting. All right, so therefore I could support it too. I think the hardship is that it gets caught up in the code, and it's really a minor request, so. Why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Sermon,
Yes.
Mr. Pelletin,
Yes.
Mr. Culling,
Yes.
Ms. Norick,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. So that's going to go as a positive recommendation of the village board, 7:30, this room, July 9th.
Move to authorize
please come up
the
and talk?
chairman to
Thank
prepare
you.
the report and recommendation for zoning board of appeals for case number 2019-C-22.
A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If anybody wants to make a comment,
They
please
get-
step up. Yeah? Nobody wants to say anything? That's my family. It's-
They want to say
Yeah, they
something, I
want to
can
say,
tell.
that's my wife and kids.
Do they have to be sworn in for public comment?
No, it's public comment, so, all right. I'm gonna.
Swearing comes afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
They do?
Are you guys really going to say something?
Yeah.
All right, come on up.
Go ahead.
Congrats.
7 years. Nice job.
Thank you.
Also, if they just did 2 sheds and put a door in between them, it would look like 1 shed and it would be under the code. So that's what I was trying to
All
do.
right.
So now I have a
future
question
zoning
for
board
the two
member.
of you.
Yes.
Now that your father is not going to be occupied on
Right.
Wednesdays, maybe Mondays, will you spend more time with him?
He'll still be busy
Yes.
Wednesday.
Oh, very
She's going off to
nice.
college.
Yeah,
She's going off to college. She's not going to spend more time with me. Well, maybe this summer she'll spend more time with me.
we'll go bowling on Wednesday nights at 7:30
I'm in.
now.
I'm in.
Can I put my face on that thing and have it up there?
Maybe when it goes off air.
I do,
If you stand there long
behalf
enough,
of
you
your-
might, if they're listening.
for
How
your
many
father,
viewers?
we do, the board would like to,
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
they turned it off.
All right, you can put your head there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we turn off the live stream?
that you provided for the village.
You guys are all down the same path, and so I thank you guys as well for
10
volunteering
years
your time.
is
Yeah, that's quite a commitment.
Really.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a really long time to be with you, but
yeah, well, I appreciate you guys putting up with me for the amount of time that you've had to.
There are other commitments or ways we can meet you. I mean,
How
right.
long were you the chair?
congratulations.
Chair for a little over 4 years.
Very good.
And board for 10 years. Anybody that wants to step up, it's a great thing to do, volunteer for the community. And I do want to say one thing, since we're still recording here. I don't think enough credit ever goes to staff. Lisa and John and the rest of their staff do a fantastic job for the village, and, really, I think they only field the negatives more often than the positives. So I'd just like to say thank you for all the support of me and of the board, and on behalf of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, for my final time saying this meeting is adjourned.